Were there, when you're starting a business, I know you mentioned that you transitioned from teaching to starting the DME company. Do you have any funny stories along the way or anything that you experienced? Man, we'll never do that again.
I guess one of them was my talking about driving the van. A friend was getting engaged, but she didn't know she was getting engaged. So all of our friend group was going to Dallas to surprise her. And we drove the van to Dallas and it broke down on the side of the road. I just remember thinking, what are we doing? Because I think we had to do a delivery on our way back. And our sweet friends waited for us. But I thought, are we just crazy? I mean, you have to be a little crazy to do what we're doing, I'm sure. But that was
everyone has a little crazy to start a business.
And it makes things interesting.
On this episode of Take This Down, I sit down with Kristina Robertson, Executive Director and co-founder of Project 4031. We talk about her upbringing in Fort Worth and how she knew from an early age she wanted to make a difference in people's life, and how starting a DME business led to her ultimately co-founding Project 4031. You're going to want to take this down. You're going to want to take this down. Kristina, thank you for joining me on Take This Down. I'm really and truly looking forward to having this conversation, but I know you're a busy lady, a woman, mother, executive director, so thank you for taking the time to sit down with me today.
Well, thank you, Ty, for having me. This is a true honor, and I know you're extremely busy as well, so thank you.
No. Well, I always like to tell my guests why I wanted them on the show. You and I, our paths crossed, I don't know how many years ago now, but I had the opportunity to join the board for Project 4031 and to learn more about you and your husband, Josh, and not about, what you may see, but about you all's heart. And it just really just has resonated. You and Josh have been a blessing to me and Jordan, your friendship, but also your leadership, and just thought the rest of the world should know more about Kristina and Project 4031.
Oh, thank you, Ty. That means a great deal.
So who is Kristina Robertson at her core?
I think at my core, I hope that I have a good heart, that I'm a servant leader. I'm a mother, a wife, hopefully a good friend, and one who just loves others and wants to show that love to the world. And hopefully I'm showing that through my work. No,
it is for sure. Okay. It is for sure. So, did you grow up in Fort Worth?
I did, born and raised.
So tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
Yeah, so I lived my first 10 years in Arlington Heights neighborhood. My mom was a big advocate of the Montessori program. And so I went to Coma Montessori through elementary school, Daggett Montessori through middle school, and then graduated from Pasco High School.
Mm-hmm. And then you ultimately became a Red Ryder, which I'm not going to hold against you.
Get your guns up.
When you went to Texas Tech, I know you started your career in education. Mm-hmm. Did you know you wanted to be a teacher?
I think so, but I think, everything's hindsight 2020. I grew up with a great deal of educators in my family. Not my mother, but my grandmother was an educator, a great aunt, my aunt, and a cousin. Just thought that was a natural path for me. I don't know if I would have done that looking back, but I knew I wanted to make a difference in the world, and I love children, so I thought that was a natural fit for the path that I wanted to lead at the time.
When you knew you wanted to make a difference, did you know kind of early on, even through your childhood and going into high school, that you knew your purpose or meaning had to do something with making an impact?
I think so. I think that's part of my core too. I like to impact people, hopefully in a positive way. And I think as I mature, continuing to follow my path, has always been a core of who I was at the very beginning.
So did you like to play house in school and doctor, nurse as a kid?
I like to play teacher. And I remember my grandmother had a desk that I liked to play administrative assistant, to be honest with you. I'd pretend to answer the phones and so forth.
Gotcha. And so, going through the Montessori school and now finishing at Pasco and going to Tech, which is a large state university with not a lot of distractions in Lubbock or anything like that. Did you feel that you were prepared to take on the world when you finished Tech?
Not at all, to be honest with you. I think I had so going back to a bit of my story, I think I had to grow up pretty quickly. My father passed away my freshman year of college, and not knowing at the time, but I really had to kind of put my feet down. I had, the typical freshman year and probably had a little bit too much fun. the freshman year, but then into sophomore year, when my father passed away, it's like, okay, this is real life. And I really got to get down and get my act together, to be honest with you. So I guess I was more prepared than I realized I was because of that experience.
Well, first, I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't know that, so I'm sorry to hear that. You know, having to face not only the challenges of being in a new setting, you know, kind of on your own in college, but also, I'm going to say handling, you know, no longer having your father. How was that for you?
Very difficult. I'm an only child, and my father was kind of my person, and he was the person I'd call if I would have a hard day or so forth. And so not having that support from him specifically, I had other support in my life, definitely, but that was definitely a transition that I had to take on pretty rough, I think, through that time period of my life.
You know, talk a little bit about your support system. You know, I know sometimes, you know, when people are faced with, I'm going to call it a death or tragic situations, they respond one or two ways. You know, they let it propel them forward or they let it hold it back. But obviously it sounds like you know, let it push you forward, but it sounds like the support system was there.
Definitely. I had, my grandmother was a huge support. My mother and my dad's side of the family is a huge support. It was, education's a very important role in our family, I would say. And so it was an expectation to go to college. And so I remember my dad passed away 2 days before my 19th birthday. We had his funeral and I was expected to go back to college that Wednesday after. But I think if I hadn't had that nudge from my family, the path might have gone a different route. So I'm grateful for it, even though it was a difficult time. And then I have had wonderful friends that I would call family, specifically in college, who are still close friends today, that supported me as well.
That's good. That's good. And so you obviously graduate and, you know, you get your, if I'm not mistaken, your degree in early childhood education.
Yes.
Did you know what school district or where you wanted to go back to?
I did not. My mother had the difficult conversation with me. It's like, you know, the buck stops here, Kristina, and you've got to, it's time. And so I moved home because I didn't have a job. I graduated in December, so it was kind of that mid-year kind of difficult time, I guess, if you would, just for hiring purposes. So I came back and lived with my mother, substitute taught in Fort Worth ISD for 6 months, and then received a job going into the fall.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So you came back to Fort Worth ISD, you know, had the substitute teaching, but was taking on your own classroom full time, you know, everything you expected it to be?
Of course it was. No, it was not. And I think, you know, you learn, I think, the basics in college, but the true life doesn't happen until you're kind of in that first job scenario. And I remember telling a great aunt that was also a huge support of mine that, can you have a beginning life crisis? Because I think that's where I'm at this point.
That's my beginning life crisis. But it's real, you know, it's like, you know, you go to college and, you know, I'm not saying that life is just full of no problems and issues, but you go straight into the real world. It's like, what am I doing?
Exactly. And you have no clue what you're doing.
You know, and so what grade did you teach?
My first year taught pre-K, and then I taught kindergarten my last 4 years, I believe.
Oh, so you taught a lot of honest kids.
Very honest kids and sweet kids, but yes.
Did you see any challenges of, you know, being with kindergartners? One, not just connecting, but, you know, feeling like you had all the resources to prepare them as they kind of established their foundation for school?
I definitely was very green my first year of teaching. I taught on the east side of Fort Worth, and I thought I was a well-rounded person, but honestly, these babies were coming from a great deal of hard, difficult times, and I was not prepared to be that support for them. I think I learned through great advocates of myself that were supporting me how to navigate that, but I learned a great deal during that first year especially.
Did you feel like you couldn't do enough because of some of the challenges that your students were facing?
Yes, nor did I just have the education behind of what the real support that they needed, not just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. So,
gotcha. And so what led to the transition out of teaching?
So my husband, who was, we were seriously dating at the time, was starting a DME company, which is durable medical equipment for hospice patients. And he grew up in a medical family. True entrepreneurship, we were the ones at the very beginning. We tease and say it was our date nights and go out with the van and set up, you know, a hospital bed or a bedside commode or whatever the family needed at the time, and going into their personal space and really having some intimate conversations with them. If they'd allow us to pray with them, but really just in their environment and realizing there is a lot going on inside that house that I don't know if anybody realized. so we'd go back in the evenings and just kind of speak about this and seeing a pattern. I was like, there has to be something else going on here, or that we can get behind as a for-profit to support these families more than we're providing with them now. And we just weren't finding that. And Josh has some wonderful stories outside of me that not even in Fort Worth, because they were expanding pretty quickly, but it was up north and it was wintertime and the utilities were off and they were bringing this person home in their house and they didn't have heat. And he's like, there's no way you can bring this person home and be comfortable. And so they did what they needed to at the time to support him. But it was that pattern that we were seeing. I was like, we've got to do something here. And it's very out of my nature to kind of go off the beaten path of what my plan was. But just very naively, and I think very God-led, as I look back, is what made us go down this path.
And so I want to, unpack that just a little bit because, you talked about from the education system, some of your students that you taught didn't have, I'm going to say, some of the resources or some of their needs addressed on their personal life at home to essentially make them prepare them for in the classroom. Mm-hmm. And then you start a new business, mm-hmm. which, for profit, the goal is to make as much money as you possible, and naturally in business. Mm-hmm. But you see that there's still a need, for the clients that you're serving. Mm-hmm. Do you think this goes back to kind of like your upbringing, like, wanting to make a difference? That's why you're noticing the need versus not just focusing on the bottom line?
I think so. I think, again, going back to your first question of the core, I turned 40 this year, but I think I'm still navigating who I am as a person. But that's always been a core part of me, whether I realized it or not, is wanting to help somebody that maybe not less than, but not have what they need to be supported in the community. And I just always wanted to lean into that, I guess.
So talk a little bit about what you did or what you and Josh did to lean into that.
It's a lot of hard lessons, I think. Like, oh, nope, that didn't work. Let's not do that again. But we really just started out of our home. I would go to hospice conferences with him and just see who would kind of gravitate to what we were trying to do. And I always tease and would love to have kept one of the first brochures because I'm sure it was very rough and very primitive, if you will. But just seeing who would navigate towards us. And Arkansas was the first state to kind of navigate towards us. It was very rural, and the social workers there needed a great deal of support. So that's where we led, and we served one patient in 2012, and then it just kind of kept going from there. So we just kind of took, I guess, the next right step is what we were trying to do.
And so is that how Project 4031 was created, just going to conferences and just listening to the needs, or did it happen in the reverse?
I guess both. I remember, having conversations with Josh's dad, and parents were very supportive at the beginning and still are to this day, but kind of sat around the table. We had certain individuals just kind of fed into us and gave us the next path, I guess. We worked with the organization to actually receive our 501c3 because that can be very daunting for a nonprofit. And I remember paying for that. And I'm like, that's a lot of money to pay for something we're not 100% sure of. But again, I think God was leading us, even if we didn't realize it at the time. And just having faith, I think a lot of faith helped us get to where we are today. And
so, I know the meeting, but maybe the rest of the audience and that might be watching this today or down the road may not know, but where did the name Project 4031 come from?
So it's from the Bible verse Isaiah 40:31 about giving strength on wings like eagles. And I remember sitting around the table with my father-in-law and my husband, and it's like, what are we actually going to call this? And that just kind of kept coming to the forefront of us of what we're trying to do and giving comfort and care to individuals at the end of life. And it's my father-in-law's favorite Bible verse, so it was a great deal of meaning to us as well.
Gotcha. And so do you think that kind of encompasses that being called by God to the work that you're doing today?
I think so. I hope it's the right direction that God's leading us.
And so now we're almost 12 years, 14 years, forgive me, 14 years into Project 4031. Can you just talk a little bit about what Project 4031 is and what you all do?
Yes, so we provide human basic needs to end-of-life individuals. we're considered terminally ill. So you have to be considered terminally ill by Medicare standards, which is 6 months or less, but we serve children and adults. And to our core, it's what we started at the very beginning. Our largest program is funding for families, which is providing basic needs, a great deal of mortgage, rent, utilities, whatever that need is in the home at the end of life, we're able to provide. And then we have a last dream piece, which is granting last dreams. But at the end of life, it's very humbling of what people are asking for. We're not taking people to Disneyland or to Greece or so forth. It's bringing someone in to say goodbye one last time. If they're able to travel, go see a beloved place one last time. We've done a great deal of reclining chairs so the patient can be in the middle of the heart of the house and not tucked away in a bedroom. So just giving peace at the end of life is what we're trying to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, I'm just blessed and lucky to have a small part of the work that you all are doing. What have been some of the challenges that you face leading this organization?
I think there's been a great deal. I like to call them learning opportunities.
Learning opportunities. Take that down. Learning opportunities, not challenges.
There's definitely challenges. And I think every day is just so different. We truly started with nothing. I remember we had our first fundraiser to really see if we could do this, and we raised $7,000. And I thought, okay, we can do this. And now I look back and again, how naively that was. But I think being strategic, continuing to balance our budget and our families that we're serving and be able to continue to grow. And I think we will be one of those nonprofits here at for many years to come. But there's a patient comes in the door and we have to serve them, and we don't want to say no. So how can we serve them for what we are being given to provide them, to give that strength at the end of life is always our goal. And if we've done that at the end of the day, then I feel like we've made our mission.
And so do you kind of partner with hospice care facilities or different organizations, or how do people learn about your services?
Yes to both. It's been very organic. How people have learned about is very word of mouth. So we're grateful for these opportunities. I will say that's one of the challenges that we've faced is just getting our name out there in the community. And I think that's growing, and I'm very grateful and excited for that. But yes, we consider the social workers and nurses kind of our second clients. Our hope is that we're making their job a little bit more easier to provide a service for their patients. And we think the world of them. So 90% of who come in the door is referred by a social worker or nurse in the hospice company specifically.
I know Project 4031, as you mentioned, is named after a Bible verse, your father-in-law's favorite Bible verse. Is there any type of outreach that you provide to clients who may be interested in some type of, religious or, ministry type assistance, if you will?
We do. We have what we call prayer partners. And I will say, we believe that if we're being hands and feet of the Lord, then we're loving everyone that comes in the door, no matter what faith or background you have. But yes, if we ask on the application if you'd like to be part of a prayer partners, is what we call it. When you have a wonderful community out there, and we send a prayer, and I should say Nicole, our program director, sends a prayer every Monday with a list of first names, not last, of individuals who have asked to be on that prayer list. And then at our weekly meetings every week, we're praying for the patients that we're serving, and just knowing that somebody out there that you don't even know is thinking about you and the difficulties that you're facing, I think says volumes. And I hope they feel that love coming through from us.
Yeah. I'm not going to take away the stories that you personally have to say, but, just being in some of our meetings and just hearing that people that don't have a lot of time left on earth, some of the concerns that they're thinking about or some of the wishes that they're asking is, can you pay our rent or our mortgage so my family doesn't have to worry about?
Right.
How does that just sit with you? Does it's a kind of, it feels like it's, a big emotional undertone that you take on. Did you feel that?
I do. I think I really try to lean into the light that I hope we're being and the love that we're sharing. And I know death in general is a very hard topic, and I can feel when someone's like, Kristina, I just can't go there. That's extremely difficult. But you can have the hard and the good at the same time, I believe. And so if I'm focusing on the good and yes, this person is passing away, but we were able to step in that and provide support in some way, somehow, then I think we've done our job. And I lean into that more than in difficult times. And there's some patients that, you just hear their stories and it just brings tears to your eyes and you just want to do so much more that we really can't. But I hope that one piece gave a little bit of comfort. And our prayer is even that the family, after the loved one has passed away, has some grounding to them, and their grief is a little, even though it's still challenging, maybe a little easier, and they have some happy memories to hold on to, then we've served past what we were doing just for the patient directly.
Yeah, so if anyone that's listening or watching this, if they want to get involved, engaged with Project 4031, how can they help?
Just reach out. We would love to talk to whoever would come to the door. We have volunteer programs, different aspects of the organization that wherever you feel called to be a part of, we'd love to speak with you. So our website's project4031.org, and you can reach out to me personally. Our number is 817-653-8976. So we'd love to talk with you.
And there's an annual event coming up. So please just talk a little bit about that.
Yes, so November is Hospice and Palliative Care Month. And so we've always taken that time, one, to celebrate the community that we're serving, but also it brings wonderful funds in for us and to continue on to the following year. And so we call it our Impact Dinner, and it's November 8th at the Ashton Depot from 6:30 to 10. And we'd love for anybody to come and be a part of it. We have some wonderful sponsorship opportunities that are on our website, and just we can navigate whatever works best for the person.
So in 14 years, what kind of impact do you have Project 4031 made on the community? And what impact do you hope to make 14 and 40 years from now?
Oh gosh, I hope that we've made a great deal of positive impact in the community. I tell my team, I don't think we'll ever know the true impact that we're making. But I hope that it's there and that people see that. We have a goal to serve a patient a day by the end of the decade, with being sustainable to continue that motion forward. And I think we'll get there. So if we make that, I know we'll be here till the end.
And so, let's say we're 40 years from now, we're celebrating, I guess your 80th birthday, but also we're going to finally let you retire and no longer be the executive director, because Project 4031 is doing $100 million in revenue and making an impact throughout the country. How do you want to be remembered?
I know it sounds corny, but I think just of love and kindness. I think there's obviously a lot of that in the world that we probably don't see a great deal of. But I just love to be remembered as someone that tried their best, made a lot of mistakes, and was human, but loved her family and her people and her community, and tried her best at that till the very end.
That's good. Well, Kristina, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you again for sitting down and having this conversation with me. And as you know, whatever I can do to help, you have my support.
I'm very grateful for you and Jordan. Thank you so much, Ty.
Thank you.